Welcome to Friday Friends, RI Elder Info's weekly look at the organizations and individuals providing resources for Rhode Island seniors, caregivers, and professionals.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. It is a lovely Friday morning. It is 9 a.m. and you are joining me, Deb Burton, the host of Friday Friends, for a wonderful conversation today with Secretary of State Amore to talk to you about voting. I don't know if maybe you might have heard something on the news that maybe there's like some kind of voting coming up. So we're going to get accurate information from the top to make sure that you are informed. That's our goal. But as you know, our goal every Friday is to bring you information and resources that you or someone you know needs to know about. So please make sure you hit the like button, the share button, the bells, the whistles, the social media cues that say, check this out, because it's super important. So please do that and help us get the word out so that we have accurate information out there, because you know that that's something that's really important to RI Elder Info. So you also know RI Elder Info is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we could not bring you Friday Friends without the support of our sponsors and our donors. So big thank you to Point 32 Health Foundation, to United Healthcare, as well as Oak Street Health, 321 Media, England Studio, and McCarthy Law. Here's a brief message from McCarthy Law before we get started with Secretary of State Amore.
Here at McCarthy Law, we practice in the areas of estate planning, long-term care planning, elder care law, and residential real estate. Our focus is really on providing peace of mind to our clients.
If you're interested in scheduling a consultation with our office, you can feel free to reach out to us at 401-541-5540. You can also reach out via website at www.mccarthylawri.com. You also should check out our social media, both on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, for some helpful tips and tricks.
Welcome. How are you?
Good morning. How are you, Deb?
Good. It is a fabulous morning. Could use a little bit more sunshine, but it'll come, I think, later today.
Not raining. It's not raining. It's good.
Yes, we've had a great stretch lately. That's been awesome. So tell us, what can we expect this year when it comes to voting in Rhode Island?
Sure. So we're in the middle of a primary process right now. The primary election is September 10th, and there's not a complete list of primaries out there. Many of the members of the General Assembly are unopposed for a primary, but there are primaries, especially in Cranston. There's a mayoral primary. There's a Senate primary. There are other primaries out there, local elections, school committee and city council. So that's September 10th. The early voting process is underway now, and you can go to your city or town hall. For the most part, I would check our website, vote.ri.gov, to check for sure where your early voting location is. But it's usually at your city or town hall, regular business hours, no lines, no hassle, really quick. Folks there to help you through the process, and you can vote early. We are in a mail ballot process as well, although at this point in the process, if you have a mail ballot, you should be delivering it to a ballot drop box. And again, there's one at every city or town hall, or bringing it by hand to your local city or town hall office, or the Board of Elections, or the Department of State, because if you put it in the mail now, it may not get there by 8 p.m. on election day. So that's the first part, right? We're in a primary process, and that will be followed by a general election process where there's a presidential election. To your point, people have heard about that a little bit on the news. In fact, the presidential debate is the evening of our primary. So we anticipate that the general election will have high turnout, that people will vote in all three ways they can vote: by mail, early in person, and traditionally on election day. And we want to make sure that that's convenient for everyone. So you can actually apply for a mail ballot online at our office at vote.ri.gov. You put your information in, we send you a mail ballot, and we give you options as to how to follow your mail ballot along the way. So you know that it's been received, that it's been processed, and that it will be counted for a vote. And that's a really nice way to make sure that your vote is being counted. And we're proud of that process and proud of the fact that you can do that by email or text to find out where your ballot is along the process. Then early in person is very popular among Rhode Islanders because all of our city and town halls, and again, for the most part, that's where this is taking place, are accessible. And so it's an easy process. There's plenty of parking, especially for folks who might be disabled. And then there's no lines. There are very few lines in the early voting process. I don't know of many places where you're not in and out in a blink. And so that's nice. And it's nice for our elections officials too, because then that kind of eases the burden on election day and reduces the lines on traditional election day. So we're pleased to provide any resources to anyone who needs assistance or has a question about their voter registration, their polling location. We have sample ballots online directed right at your precinct, so you can look at the actual ballot that you're going to vote. And these are all important resources that all Rhode Islanders have access to. We want to make sure that they know that they're accessible.
And I want to make sure that we're clear, because I think sometimes people didn't necessarily have the civics classes available to them when they went to school. The primary that is coming up on September 10th, next Tuesday, that is for our local ballots, for local initiatives, for people to come out and vote locally for the things that are important to them locally.
So the primaries are party driven. So there's a Democratic primary and there's a Republican primary. And we do have federal primaries, right? Senator Whitehouse has a primary opponent, Mr. Costa. So there's a race there. Now, the difference between a primary election and a general election is that the primary election is for party members or unaffiliated voters, and I think 47% of Rhode Islanders are unaffiliated voters. Unaffiliated voters to choose one or the other primary, and then that determines who will be on the general election ballot. And so local measures, a bond issue for a school, a question, a ballot question, those appear on the general election because they're not party oriented. So this is really a party driven process. Democrats, Republicans, are independent candidates or Green Party candidates or whatever candidate, whatever party someone's associated with. That's a separate process that goes right directly to the general election process. So the primary process in Rhode Island is all, and in all places, is all about parties and a party selecting their candidate for the general election.
Okay.
The part about Rhode Island is it's an open primary. You don't have to be a registered Democrat to vote in the Democratic primary. You don't have to be a registered Republican to vote in the Republican primary. But if you are a registered Democrat, you can't vote in the other primary, and vice versa. But since almost the majority of Rhode Islanders are unaffiliated, they get to choose which primary they vote in. And I think Rhode Islanders know that our primary elections are really important because in some cases, that's the only election. The person who wins the primary will be unopposed in the general election. So I encourage Rhode Islanders to vote in primaries. The primary turnout is always lower because people perceive it to be an in-party battle. But I think it's really important that Rhode Islanders tune into these primaries because in many cases, that's the only opportunity they'll have to vote in this election cycle.
That is amazing. So for folks, as we approach November, when we think about voting, there's a lot of rhetoric out there in the media, on social media, that may not exactly be the most accurate information. So for folks who want to vote, when you're going to vote in person, do you need to have an ID, a photo ID with you?
You do. You do. Rhode Island has a voter ID law so that anytime you're voting in person, you must present a valid Rhode Island identification, and it's a photo identification.
Okay.
And if you do not have that photo identification with you, you'll be offered a provisional ballot. So you'll fill out a provisional ballot. You'll say, oh my goodness, I forgot my ID. I am who I say I am. Please, I'd like to vote. We're going to give you a provisional ballot, but we're going to hold that ballot back and not tally that ballot until we confirm that you are who you said you were. And that's done in a process with the local canvassing office so that they can check to see who that person is, if they're registered, and they'll even contact that person to make sure that they are who they said they were. So I advise everyone, bring your ID to the polls. It's a quick process. It's an electronic poll pad process. Quickly run through there. You're confirmed, and then you cast your vote. But yes, in-person voting requires an ID.
Okay.
Photo ID.
Okay. So in person, bring your photo ID. Now, if somebody is homebound for whatever reason, or they need to do a mail ballot, how do they get a mail ballot?
So there's two different ways to get a mail ballot. There's the traditional way, which is to fill out an application that is returned to your local city or town hall, the canvassing authority there, and that mail ballot will be sent to you through the Department of State and then returned to the Board of Elections. So that's the traditional route. Then there's the online request, which happens through our office at vote.ri.gov, where you plug in your identification number and all your other information, birth date and address, and request a mail ballot. And we will send you that mail ballot. In either case, you can track your mail ballot. So that's the first way. And then if for whatever reason there is a circumstance where you're unable to request that mail ballot by the deadline, and we're past the deadline for the primary at this point, but we have plenty of time for the general election, and I would encourage people to apply for their mail ballots now for the general election. But if there's some reason that you missed that deadline, we do have emergency mail ballots, and emergency mail ballots are designed for folks who are incapacitated in some way or immobilized. They will not be able to get to the poll. They missed the mail ballot deadline, but we don't want to deny them their right to vote. So they request an emergency mail ballot, and that's a form you have to fill out that goes directly to your local board of canvassers, and then you have someone pick that ballot up for you, right, and sign off on that. So there's a process so we know who's requesting, who's receiving that ballot, who's bringing it, and obviously it cannot be put in the U.S. mail. It has to be brought to a drop box or brought to a polling location prior to 8 p.m. on election day. And that process is designed for folks who may have had a medical situation, some unforeseen issue, and they missed that mail ballot deadline, but they're physically unable to be at the polling place.
And when you complete that mail ballot and you bring it to your town or city hall, Board of Canvassers, the Board of Elections, your office, a drop box, is your ballot opened and counted ahead of time, or do they all get opened and counted on election night?
They are processed, so opened and designated to their precinct prior to election day. They are run on election day, so they are counted on election day just like every other vote. But what makes Rhode Island a much quicker process is our law allows us to process the mail ballot prior to election day. Many states, and it's the reason that you have late reporting from some states, and in some cases you don't get final unofficial results for days, is because their laws don't allow the ballot to be processed until election day, or in some cases after election day. So when the polls close, that's when the mail ballots are processed. But in Rhode Island, we're processing those, so we're getting them ready to be counted prior to election day. But the privacy of the vote is upheld. The envelope is separated from the ballot. No one's name is connected to that ballot. There's no way anyone at the Board of Elections can see who voted for who. Your privacy is upheld, and we think that's the right way to do it, so that there are quicker results. And they're unofficial results. We don't have official results until the audit's completed, until all ballots are received from our counted from our overseas folks. And as long as those are in our possession, we may not have been able to process them because they may have arrived on election day. So that's a great question, and I think we do it right.
And when you say processed, is it a human being who is opening the
No,
envelopes, or
no,
is the envelope fed through a machine
it's a
that
machine.
slices it and takes
That's
it out
you.
automatically?
You have just described it perfectly.
No
That's
human contact.
no human contact.
So nobody can peek.
Nope, nope.
No peeking.
You described it perfectly. That's exactly what the machine does.
Okay, so that's good. So
And
no,
that's relatively new in Rhode Island. And again, we think it makes the process expedient, but it also makes the process what it should be, what is known as an Australian ballot, which is a private ballot. That's the historical term for a private ballot. So no one knows who you voted for or how you're thinking. This is a private situation between you and that ballot, and no one else has access to it.
that's awesome. Now, if somebody has a disability or they're in long-term care, are they allowed to hand their ballot to somebody else to just go fill out for them?
Yes, and the Board of Elections has designated folks who go to long-term care facilities and receive those ballots and assist with those ballots. And they go through training and they go through processes. And most long-term care facilities have a staff member on site who is the point person for the Board of Elections on this process. Now, that's if you need assistance and you want someone to help you with that process. But the regular application process for people in long-term care is what I previously described. Now, there are a whole host of other ways to assist voters. We have separate types of ballots for people who are visually impaired.
Okay.
We have the express voting machine, which helps folks with a myriad of disabilities, but also folks who don't have disabilities can cast their vote using the express machine. And we're willing to go and demonstrate that machine. And we have done that in dozens of places, including long-term care facilities. And so there are options out there. And then, most Rhode Islanders are probably not aware that you can bring somebody with you to the polling place in person, a relative, a friend, and that person can assist you if you need assistance in in-person voting. Also, the poll workers there, if you ask for assistance, will assist you in-person voting. So there's a myriad of options for folks who have challenges. And we think that, we're very responsive at the Rhode Island Department of State. So if you call us or email us, we will get right back to you and offer you that assistance in whatever way is fit for your situation.
And just to be clear, when you say that people can assist someone with voting, that doesn't mean that voter is saying, "Oh yeah, here it is. God, you just fill it out."
No,
it's let me help you read it.
It's in the regular process of the vote. So maybe it's assisting somebody just in the way of helping them to that voter booth, right?
Okay.
But it could be in helping them see or read, right? A voter says, I want to fill my ballot out. I don't want to use that electronic machine. So that's what it looks like. It's not a way to have someone coerce your vote. In fact, you'd only come in with somebody you're comfortable with, right? And the people at the polling locations are trained in this process. So it's not about coercion. It's truly about help.
Okay, that's good. So there's no third party filling out people's ballots and things like that.
Nope.
That's taken care of.
Nope,
Even when you mail it in, the machine opens
That's
it.
right. That's right. So it's assistance in person. And if you're using a mail ballot, it's your privacy is kept.
Okay. Now, if folks maybe have a disability, can they check out the equipment ahead of time? Like if you get nervous about like going into a new environment, because maybe, you're voting in a different precinct, you're not familiar with the environment and you get a little anxious. Can they see that ahead of time?
So I would suggest two things. The first is to go on our website and look at your sample ballot for your precinct. Okay. That gets you comfortable with what you're faced with on election day. And the other thing is, yes, you can sample these machines, right? The Board of Elections is very open to Rhode Islanders calling, making an appointment and saying, could you help me out with this? Show me this. I'm a little nervous. I've got some anxiety around using this machine. Could you help? And they will do that. They'll make an appointment for you. They'll do that. We have had a series of town hall type situations where our staff goes out with the express voting machine and we demonstrate it. And then we have folks come up and use it. in real time. And we've done that in all sorts of settings, including long-term care settings. We've done it in schools. We've done it at special camps. We've done it for the visually impaired. So we're out there doing that all the time. But by request at this point, especially for the primary, that would have to happen really quickly at the Board of Elections. But after the primary, we'll be out there again, and we try to put that on social media and let people know where we're going to be. But the Board of Elections is incredibly accommodating to anyone who wants to tour the facility, watch how the mail ballot process works, and practice, so to speak, on those machines.
Wow. So you can actually watch the whole process.
By the way, you can watch the process in real time. So we have a very thorough signature verification process for mail ballots. It is either two unaffiliated voters or a Democrat and a Republican who are looking at a series of signatures. They both must agree that that signature matches the signature on file, or that vote is not counted. And that is open to the public. That can be viewed. So the process is incredibly transparent. And then post-election, we have our post-election audits where randomly precincts are selected. We look at the vote tally as conducted by the machine. And then we have volunteers who hand count a specific election and see if it matches up with what the machine counted. And that is open to the public, and that is streamed. And I can tell you that's been happening since 2016. And the results have been right on. The machine and hand results have been right on every time. So that's all open to the public. That's why I think, and many elections administrators agree, this is the most transparent and secure American elections have ever been, despite what people may hear and read and see on some news sources and on social media. This is a very scrutinized process and is a very open process. And voter lists are more accurate than they ever have been. And we have confidence that we're doing a good job updating those voter lists all the time.
So dead people can't vote.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. So I know that many of the folks tuning into this will have remembered the signature scandal that happened in the Congressional District 1 ballot access process. So you have to get some signatures to access the ballot. And in Jamestown, a few people were on a signature list who were deceased. They were forged. Now, forgery is a separate crime, but those folks were not on our voter registration list. So even if it was not a forged signature, that signature would not have been accepted because they weren't on our list. We get updates every single week from the Social Security Administration, from the change of address, U.S. Postal Service, from our Department of Health. So we're pretty up to date on when someone has been deceased, and that's reported. And in fact, I think in the case in Jamestown, those folks hadn't been on our voter lists in a decade.
Wow. And then the other question that I see come up a lot are individuals who are in the United States who are undocumented. Are they able to vote?
No, they are not. So the federal law is very clear. Folks who are not U.S. citizens cannot vote in federal elections, and Rhode Island only has federal elections, right? So we do every 2 years, and there's always a federal election on our ballot, and you have to sign an attestation that you're an American citizen, and people have been prosecuted over the years for voting as a non-citizen, but those numbers are minuscule, and there's lots of data on this. This is not something that's happening. I think this is an attempt to gin up opposition or doubt in the election system, but it is not something that is occurring.
That is good to know. So I want to make sure I'm following everything here. The primary is September 10th. People need to hustle to get any ballots that they need to be able to be mailed in or go right to their canvassing office like right away.
Yep, and drop boxes are a great way to do that for your mail ballot.
Then there is the national election coming up in November
5th.
When you mail in your ballot, you can actually track it online or on your cell phone to see where it is in the process. Probably could track it even better than Amazon packages. It gets opened by a machine and unfolded by a machine, so no human contact there. But if you choose, you could go to the Board of Elections and watch the machine do some really cool stuff. And then when election day comes, you need to present an up-to-date valid photo ID, vote. If you need help, then you could have a helper come with you, but they can't just fill it out for you. They are taking your direction.
That's right.
And if you're visually impaired or maybe you have a mobility impairment, all of those things are accommodated.
That's correct.
And then the night of the election or shortly after, everything is certified, verified. We know who has been chosen by the people. Am I correct? Did I miss something?
That's right. And there's an audit process between the before the certification. I think many Rhode Islanders don't know that exists, but we do those random audits, and I think that builds confidence in the system.
Awesome. So nobody knows who's going to randomly get picked to say, let's just double check.
That's right. And we're part of a conglomerate of states in what is called ERIC, where we cross-check our information with other states so we can keep our voter lists accurate so that people are not voting in one state and living in another.
Wow. I might have to have you back on to touch on that. And if I may, I would also like to try to set up another opportunity to speak with the people about voting for individuals specifically who have disabilities and live in some kind of care setting. So sure. I'd love to continue that conversation with you.
Be happy to. But if that situation exists now, I would encourage family members or the residents themselves to reach out to the administration of the long-term care facility. They do have a contact person there. And if that's not possible, go directly to the Board of Elections and seek assistance. There
you go. And your family doesn't get to fill out your ballot for you.
No.
You still get to exercise that right.
It's your ballot. Correct.
Your ballot.
And that's why the Board of Elections has folks trained in this process who are nonpartisan, who go into the long-term care facilities and administer this process.
Awesome. I am so glad that you came on. I kept you almost double what I said I was going to.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Your team is going to be like, oh my goodness, your schedule.
my pleasure. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you very much, Secretary. I appreciate you coming on today. I think this was a really important conversation.
Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Everybody, your vote matters. You need to exercise your right to vote. There's a variety of ways. As Secretary of State Amore was saying, it is a secure ballot. It is a secure vote. And there's no reason to feel like you cannot go out and exercise your right to vote. I will be working on trying to find some funding, some grant funding, nonpartisan grant funding to host a panel discussion around individuals who have disabilities or are living in long-term care settings and how they may vote and what that looks like, what is and is not allowed. So stay tuned for that. That may not be a Friday Friend. That might be an entirely separate episode. So keep your eyes out because we're doing big things over here at RI Elder Info. And we want to make sure that we keep you informed of all of the information that you or someone you know needs to know about. So I look forward to seeing you all again next week. In the meantime, be well and be kind.
If you like this video, please follow us on social media and subscribe on YouTube. For more information, visit rielderinfo.com or call 401-585-0509. If you have any questions, email deb@rielderinfo.com.